What's up, everybody? Welcome to CFP Talks. My name is Joe Nissim, and with me, as always, is my bald brother, Mr. Raman Singh,
Clean shaven, sir.
clean
Clean shaven.
shaven. And as you can see, we have two very special guests, Mr. Jack DiGiorgio and Mr. Nick Sento. Guys, how?
CFP.
Oh, sorry,
CFP.
comma CFP
Commas.
with the little R. What's up, guys? How you doing?
Pretty good. How are you? Of
Doing great. Thank you for being here. Nick,
Course.
what's going on?
Not much. Glad to be here.
These guys got two big smiles on. They are past the CFP. They got some letters. They get to put it on LinkedIn now. They get to hang the certificate. So, as always, guys, we love starting these episodes by just telling everybody a little bit about yourself, kind of just giving us a background where you guys are in your career and how CFP fits in. So, Jack, let's start with you.
Sure. So I graduate of Michigan State back in May 2023. Currently working at Morgan Stanley outside Chicago. I'm an assistant. I work on a pretty big team here. There's 10 advisors, and yeah, just I always told myself that I wanted to get the CFP within 2 years of graduation. And just members of my team really pushed me to do it and really wanted me to do it. So yeah, here I am.
Did you major in financial planning in college?
I majored in finance, and then Michigan State has a wealth management and financial planning minor.
So were you, is that how you did your education for the exam?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. So I should have mentioned that. Yeah, so yeah, all I had to do post graduation was just get the books and buckle down.
How about you, Nick? Where are you in your career and kind of how did your relationship with CFP come to be?
I graduated college in 2018 from Florida Gulf Coast, which is in Fort Myers, Florida. So I'm in Sarasota, Florida now. I work for Northern Trust. I've been here since just a few months after college. We're a private bank, but we specialize in wealth management. And so everybody here in my office, the advisors I support, everyone has their CFP. A lot of people have their CFA. Um, but we're planners first. Even though there's a lot of CFAs in the office and we're pretty investment focused. Financial planning is kind of at the forefront of what we do, and so that's kind of what led me to take on the CFP, just to have that knowledge and expertise under my belt. And financial planning was essential for me.
So where, like when you guys started the CFP process, because it's always kind of interesting and Ramen has a great story with this. Like it always kind of, at least from my experience and from what I've heard from Ramen, it's always a little shocking. It's different than what you expected. So what did you guys kind of expect going in, and how did the process kind of shock you, or maybe how is it different than what you expected or what you expected from the exam?
Um, I would say just how broad all of the materials is, and just how seemingly in depth it can go on one specific topic. Um, and just the time commitment, just spending all those X number of hours per week really surprised me, and not, at times not really having a life outside of studying during the process.
Hmm. What
Yeah,
about
I
you?
think yeah, I think probably being in an office with a lot of CFAs, they kind of talk not talk down, but I would say, well, the CFP is easy, and so I went in thinking not that it would be like a cakewalk or anything, but that this won't be that rigorous, and I immediately found out that that's not the case. It very much so is, especially if thinking back to when I started this process, I was kind of naive to think like it wouldn't be that rigorous, because if you're gonna be dealing with people's life savings, why would it be anything but easy? Um, so going in, I think I was a little naive to what the process would be like. I think what Jack said is really important is that the level of discipline needed to pass this exam is definitely up there. And it's a big commitment, and everybody around you needs to understand that.
I don't know why some CFAs think that way because I've literally had CFAs who failed the CFP exam.
Yeah.
And they're like, "Oh, I thought it would have been easier." Like, no, it's not the CFA, but it's not the seven either.
And there's so much information,
Yeah,
I think
yeah,
that Jack said it, put it best that there is a lot of information. It's not entirely, super complicated, but um, there's just such a vast majority of information to cover.
yeah,
And, to fit all that in into one exam is difficult.
yeah. I
W-
wonder. Sorry,
I
go on,
was I
Joe.
was gonna say, were you guys shocked with the actual like depth of it?
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Because I remember everybody saying prior it's a mile wide but an inch deep, and I was like, I didn't feel like it was an inch deep. I felt like it was actually a little more rigorous.
Yeah.
What
Yeah,
did you guys
absolutely.
think?
Yeah. Just really every topic, insurance, investment, like it there are times, especially in your textbook, that it'll absolutely go to the bottom of the pool and that those are things that you still need to grasp.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that it got pretty specific in most areas. I can't really think of too many areas that it was just a general, broad, overview of the topic. I was surprised how in depth it went, and you needed to know the details.
Yeah. So guys, you guys were definitely part of the class and hopefully it wasn't too rigorous, but what we would love to hear from you guys is how would you say you adapted into the class in the first couple of weeks? Tell us about your experience around that.
Sure. So I remember, and I'll never forget it. I had an intro call with Joe in November, I believe, when I was interested after just looking at the website. And I had been doing like a little bit of self-studying, not as much as I should have been. And he took me through like some practice questions, and I remember just getting absolutely worked on these things. Like my it disturbed me, like my lack of knowledge coming in. Um, and then throughout the actual class, like the first couple of classes, I didn't know what to expect, and I came in, I would say, pretty unprepared. Um, and that kind of, it kind of stressed me out, but also motivated me. Like, all right, I really need to buckle down and make sure I've got all my stuff done. And with Joe's class alone, I mean, I was studying 20 to 25 hours a week with almost strictly his materials.
Oh,
Yeah, I think for me, I had learned about Joe through a colleague at work, and he kind of had warned me, and he's like, it is more rigorous than I thought, and I think you need to be ready and prepare yourself for it. You're going to be putting in, at least 3 to 4 hours a night, and you need to prepare yourself. And he was spot on, but I don't think it's tough to prepare yourself for that. But I will say, Joe does a phenomenal job of setting the tone, from the first class that, you know, you're not super overwhelmed, but you're like, okay, this, you know, this is a lot, but I can do it. And he gets you prepared for the second part of the class, which
Mm.
is test mode, and he really transitions, the students into test mode very nicely.
Did you guys feel like the the structure was one of the things that helped you guys succeed when we did get to the second part of class? Because for a lot of people that come in specifically like Jack, I actually remember your assessment quite well because I remember the look on your face of how shocked you were because when I asked you like where do you think you are or how are you tracking your progress, you're like, oh, I'm doing really, really well. Like everything is tracking upwards. And then I started covering up the answers, and your face turned like you had seen a ghost.
Mhm.
Do you feel like that the rigor and the structure was the thing that helped you guys kind of keep moving forward? Was it maybe some of the open answer stuff that made you go deeper, or maybe some combination thereof? Can you guys just talk a little bit to that?
Yeah. Yeah, I would definitely say a combination because yeah, like you said, when you covered up those answers, yeah. But I think the open note test taking was extremely helpful because you could go back and look through your notes and look through your textbooks, and while reading about a specific topic, you might pick up, something from another topic that you had briefly forgotten, like, oh, that's really something good to keep in mind. Um, and I think the case studies were extremely helpful to build that knowledge base, and then once you had the knowledge base down, to test it out.
What about you, Nick?
I think the structure of the class meeting, 3 times a week, and then with office hours on Sunday, so it's really 4 times a week. It it really instills like discipline and commitment, right from the start, and that's what really is needed to pass the exam. And you know, when you're meeting that many times a week, it's going to hold you accountable. And not only that, like you're with other students, and you might get the sense like someone, you might be feeling like you're kind of at the end of the class of like, I don't think I know as much as other people. I think, people are ahead of me. Um, but also too, I think the discussions we had in class really helped where someone may know more on a certain topic than you. And I found myself even during the exam remembering things that someone mentioned because they remembered it, but I didn't.
Mm,
And that I think sets Joe's course apart from any other. You don't get that element in other prep courses.
that's awesome, guys.
So, I appreciate you sharing that with us, guys. Now, one of the biggest things that we hear from our students is, I'm busy. I have, work life. I have client meetings. I have a family. I got to balance everything out. Now, given in your situation, how would you say you were able to balance studying for the exam and working your day job and making sure like everything else was also, taken into consideration? I'd love to hear that from your perspective.
Um, I mean, for me, I I kind of made the exam for a while like the only thing I thought about. Um, and work for me, that 8 hours was kind of an escape from it, where I could really just focus in on something else for a few hours, and then drive home, and then get back and get right back into that mindset. Like, all right, we've got stuff to do. Like, I would cook dinner, sit down for like 30 minutes, not think about anything, and then I'm like, all right, it's time to go up into my room and buckle down.
Okay.
Yeah, I would say for me, it's kind of the same thing as Jack. I made the studying for this exam a priority. Um, and I had taken this exam multiple times, and that was not the case before. Um, I think everybody that's in your life that's important to you needs to, understand that. And I've been there where some people in your life don't, understand it, and they don't support it. But I would say instilling habits to make sure that you're doing everything you can to utilize your time and prioritize the exam is incredibly important. I'll give you one example is I would go to the gym like first thing in the morning at 6 a.m. And um, for me it was kind of a form of therapy, so to speak. I was kind of in a dark place personally, and I going to the gym would really be therapeutic for me. And I had to like give that up. And the reason for that is that I just didn't have enough time to make room to go over my flashcards. And I said, like, if I really want to absorb all this information, and there's a lot of information to remember, every day I would wake up and just do my flashcards because I made, it a habit to go to the gym and check one thing off the list to start my day. And I was going to make sure that it was going to be my flashcards. And I think like habits like that is what sets who passes and who doesn't,
Mm.
sets it apart.
Well, let me ask you guys this because both of you guys experienced this, and Ramen and I in our out of class discussions, we kind of noticed this for both of you guys throughout class was, and you guys had it at different times, but you guys kind of had at some point during class, you had a shift where all of a sudden we saw your score started changing, your class discussion started changing, as opposed to maybe being a little bit quieter in class, you were leading it. Um, what fueled that shift for you guys? Like, was it now like I have this sense of urgency and now this is a priority? And I know I've had this when I was studying for CFA. There was just a point, and for me, I remember being like, I can pass this thing. Like I got to that point where like I had done enough work and I felt like, okay, I'm over the hump mentally of where like instead of feeling like the exam was bigger than me, it started to feel manageable. And that's when I went all in for it and I was doing everything that I could. Do you guys experience something similar to that? And was that the thing that fueled your shifts? Or was there something else that was going on that maybe we were unaware of? Jack, again, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, like I said, the first couple classes, I remember just feeling like stressed out and like not really looking forward to them because I felt that my knowledge base was behind the rest of the class and that I was constantly playing catch up. But once I really kind of used that as fuel to spend that extra hour, go the extra mile. I think it helped me feel more comfortable. Um, and yeah, just there's a calendar that says March 18th, the exam is coming. Every day it got one day closer and one day closer. It just kind of makes you realize that this is the end is near. Like
Yeah,
like it's a very difficult exam, but it is not impossible. Like it's passable.
that's awesome. What about you, Nick?
Yeah, so um, I was someone that had really bad test anxiety. And I think, I took Joe's prep course in the fall, and I did not do everything that Joe had outlined. Like there was a lot that I did not do, and I just was not prepared for it.
Hmm.
Um, the rigor of the course, and there was some things I just needed to work on and see again. And there was a point where I think it might have been the first mock exam or the second mock exam, and Joe's like, I need more from you. Um, and Joe telling me that, but also me knowing, there was a lot of things that kind of came up in the first time I took Joe's course in the fall. There was a hurricane. Like there's so many things that just altered me from not being disciplined. And I I told myself like no matter what happens, like I will do everything that is outlined and told like for all of us students that Joe has outlined for us, and I will leave no stone unturned. And I don't know when that was, maybe like a month and a half out, and I kind of knew I knew it to expect this time going around, going into the prep course, but I said like I will leave no stone unturned, and um, I just I can't I don't think I could live if with myself if I didn't do everything I was supposed to. And I think that's what really kind of put me over the edge. So
Awesome. All right. Well, I have one more question before we close. So, What do you guys think it was for you that if you had to boil it down, and it could be more than one thing, but let's say there's two or three things. What do you think is the difference? And Nick, you'll probably have a little bit more of a unique perspective on this because you've taken the exam previously. What is the difference between passing and failing this exam? Because you know that studying is a really fragile process. You know, walking away from studying even for 2 days starts to change things, right? And I think that's really hard for a lot of us to wrap our head around. It seems so minute, and then it has such big implications. So, if you guys kind of had to boil it down to maybe some of your habits or the things that you did that were really the thing that punched you over the hump, what would you boil down to what those two or three things maybe were? Jack, again, we'll start with you.
Um, First, I would say repetition. If something didn't make sense, just going over it again and again and again. Maybe not necessarily in the same session, but just over days or weeks. Um, the second thing I would say is I made a giant list, and it was giant, of all the things that I didn't feel that I understood enough. And I think it's important to not let that list grow enough before you're revisiting these things.
Hmm.
Like you can't let that laundry list keep growing. March rolls around and you still haven't touched half the topics. Like this needs to be an ongoing process of continuing to do the things that might feel uncomfortable because you don't know them. And just like I said, just getting reps on those.
What about you, Nick?
I'll agree with Jack. Repetition and discipline, those habits are is what's going to make you pass the exam. I also think that sort of your mindset. Um, and for someone that like myself that had really bad test anxiety, I would just doubt like, am I studying the right things? Like, is my are my study habits like working? Um, I think going in with the mindset of never getting too high or too low. Um, the learning process, as Joe says, is very, it- you know, it's just messy, right? And so one
Very.
day, yeah, it's like one day you're like, wow, I'm killing it, like I'm ready for this exam, and then the next day you're like, I'm gonna fail. And I think maybe the last like month and a half, it was basically just you know, keep your head down and just keep at it. Like just don't get too high, don't get too low. And I think having that mindset really, really helped.
Outstanding. All right, we're gonna pause this one here, and then, guys, we are gonna come back with part two with Jack and Nick, and they have a lot more nuggets and insights for you. So please make sure to like and subscribe to our channel, and we are coming back with part two momentarily.